Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we're going to take a look at Mars in the sign of Cancer making a trine to Saturn in the sign of Pisces. This is significant for a few reasons. One, we have a long stay from Mars in Cancer because of the retrograde that will happen in the new year. And then we also have multiple aspects that will be happening from Mars in Cancer to other planets. They all become more significant because of the long stay that Mars is making in the sign of Cancer. Through its eventual retrograde. So we're going to take a look at this today. It's also part of what will be a Grand Water Trine forming between Venus in the sign of Scorpio and then Saturn in Pisces and Mars in Cancer. It won't be exact, but it's pretty close to exact. And that's coming up on the heels of the eclipse with Venus entering that configuration as the ruler of the upcoming eclipse in Libra. So important to start looking at these watery connections that are being made. They have a lot to say and will be a big part of the month ahead. So anyway, that's our goal for today. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe. We are really close to 70,000 subscribers on the channel. It's free to subscribe. All of you new people who have joined the channel, welcome. All the people who've been listening but hadn't yet subscribed, thank you. We really appreciate it. It helps us grow our business. It's free to subscribe. So big shout out to everyone who's helped us double our average over the past couple of months. We really appreciate it. Transcripts of any of these daily talks can be found on the website, nightlightastrology.com. And on the website, there are two things that I want to point out today. And one of them is going to be happening on our live events page. If you go to events and then live talks, you'll see my monthly webinars. October 17th, my next webinar is the myth of astrological compatibility. What everybody gets wrong about the astrology of relationships. I think we make astrological compatibility both way too complicated and at times overly simplistic. So I'm going to tell you what I have seen that actually works, that I think you can actually use with effectiveness, because I think there's a lot of crap out there. I'm just going to be honest. This is one of those topics I have a little bit of a soapbox about. I'm not going to be judging anyone or, picking on any particular astrologers or anything like that. Just some of the ideas that are out there about how you determine astrological compatibility between charts is just ridiculous. So I'll be telling you what I think actually works and hopefully having some fun with this. Anyway, October 17th, when you register, you get the link to attend the webinar on Thursday evening, October 17th. But if you cannot attend live, you get the recording. All right, go over to courses. Astrology for Beginners is our brand new beginners course. If you are really, really new to astrology and you are just starting at zero, then check that course out. It's all recorded. It's all ready to go. You can learn the basics in that pre-recorded course. The first year course is a live course that meets through webinars. Of course, everything in the program is also recorded for you, so you can take it at your own pace or attend the live webinars. Our program starts Saturday, November 16th, coming up here, and we are in our pre-enrollment sale until October 15th. So between now and October 15th, you have the opportunity to save on the cost of the course. We have a few different early bird options for you there. And then our need-based tuition assistance. So if you are someone who could use a little bit of help to make the course happen, if you're on a fixed or limited income, please do use the tuition assistance option that is there for people who want to study astrology, but have to be very careful with their budget. We get it. We know that it's tight out there for a lot of people. And so we want to make sure that it is an accessible program, because we think that spiritual material like this ought to be accessible, that we should have different price points available for different people from different situations. So we ask that people, if you can afford it, please use our regular prices and our sales that are there right now. But if you need a little help, feel free to use that tuition assistance. At the end of today's video, if you stick around, there's an informational video about the year one program that I have just pasted onto the end of every daily video. So if you stick around, you get about 10 more minutes of information about the course, and I show you what the course website looks like and tell you what it includes and how the program unfolds and everything like that. Any questions you have about anything, email us, info@nightlightastrology.com. Okay, so on that note, let's turn our attention to the real-time clock and let's have a look at Mars and Saturn. So here is Mars coming into the trine with Saturn, Mars in Cancer, of course, moving into the trine with Saturn in Pisces. Now we are here on Thursday, September 26th. So I'm going to take this forward just a little bit and let me kind of redo my line here. All right, so we're going to see that Mars comes into that trine starting on Sunday, September 29th. So it's coming in over the weekend. And then as we move through Sunday into Monday, the transit is exact, September 30th. And then it will start to fade within a degree by Tuesday, October 1st. On Wednesday, October 2nd, it's just a little bit more than a degree off. And what I want you to notice is that as it gets to about 3 degrees of separation by about 17 degrees, right during that time, this is around October 4th, the end of next week, we see Venus, ruler of the solar eclipse in Libra, which is coming through October 2nd. We see Venus making the trine to Saturn and then going into the trine with Mars, effectively translating the light, reconnecting the two, and creating a Grand Water Trine. So a very powerful series of watery transits coming up, with the leader of those, you could say Venus, the ruler of the eclipse, Venus in Scorpio, kind of reactivating the Mars-Saturn dynamic that's starting to come through right now. Mars and Saturn move slowly, so notice that this transit will spread out between right now, and it's been building already the past couple of days, right now all the way until early part of next week. So if I had to give this transit a timeline, it would be hard to do so because Venus moving through the connection lasts all the way until October 8th, moving through the configuration to both Saturn and Mars, which really continues to keep them all connected in a way like sticky tape. So if we, again, kind of spread this out, here we are on September 26th, and they're just within that engagement range now of a couple of degrees. But if we spread it out, we get the aspect forming Sunday into Monday, the 29th into the 30th. And then because of Venus's engagement with Saturn, we get the continuation of this watery grand trine all the way until, I'd say, right about the 8th, 9th. You could actually, they're still together a little bit on the 9th. Let's spread it out to the 10th. Then they're really separating. So that's a long time for a lot of watery energy. What do we make of that? Well, today we're going to start with talking about Mars and Saturn in these watery signs. And there's a couple of things that I think we ought to watch for. So first is, whenever you get the malefics in a trine with one another, you have two difficult planets, two planets that are associated with subjectively difficult things. They're not bad planets. They're just representative of things that for human beings tend to be a little difficult. For example, Mars is the god of war. People generally like Venus better than Mars, subjectively speaking. That doesn't mean that there's not a lot of love for Mars too, like sports or competition or developing assertiveness and courage, all Mars themes. But Mars is also a planet that cuts and severs and is associated with heat and fevers, and is the god of things like frustration and obstacles and the need for perseverance in the face of difficulty. So that's Mars, right? But then Saturn too, we know Saturn is associated with things like the hard, slow process of maturation and growth, the discipline needed to grow up in life. To do hard things requires perseverance and determination and discipline. Those kinds of Saturnian qualities are often also, they're also, we experience them as difficult. And Saturn is associated with things like restriction and limitation. Saturn is also associated with things like polarization, is associated with, I should say, the opposition, the aspect of the opposition. So when you get the two malefics coming together, the point is that when they're in a trine, their energies become constructive and useful somehow, but that doesn't mean that we somehow take away their difficulty. So one of the ways that you end up blending the significations of those two planets when they're in a trine is to say that something difficult will come up, but it will be manageable. So I just said manageably difficult news, but it could be that there's a difficult circumstance or a little difficult passage, let's call it, a difficult weather front, whatever image or metaphor you like to use, but it will somehow be manageable. There will be resources available to us that allow us to work through or deal with it. One of the great parts about Mars and Saturn is that when those two planets come together in any aspect, they tend to do well working under pressure. Perseverance and working through moments where you're limited or you're tired, but you still get the job done. Working through time constraints or budgetary constraints or energetic constraints, and somehow managing to persevere and persist and succeed. Very Mars-Saturn. So when they're in a trine, it could be that there are some difficult things coming up, and yet it could be that there's some resources available to deal with the situation. And that is a very broad understanding of the malefics in a trine that you could use really in any signs. Maybe the only way we would modify it here is to talk about what kinds of difficulties are likely to come up by virtue of the signs. And I'm going to talk about those in some of the next points. One of the things that we could say here is that when a fallen Mars in Cancer, which brings with it its own sensitivities, and it's a vulnerable place for Mars, the god of war is in the place of maternal care. And so you get advocacy for, let's say, women or children as a very common Mars in Cancer theme, protecting those you love with emotional fierceness. These are really lovely Mars in Cancer themes at times. Of course, they don't negate the fact that something will need protecting or something will need advocating, which implies the danger or threat to something that is vulnerable. And so there's still like a weightiness with Mars in Cancer, and it also tends to bring up conflicts within places like home and family, or difficulties with vulnerable topics like the body and health. This is why I mentioned you wouldn't believe the number of emails and comments that I got from women who confirmed that during this Mars stay in Cancer, they will be having a mastectomy. I'm not saying that that doesn't happen for everyone, right? It's kind of a rare thing, in fact, but it is one of the most common placements I have seen for like any kinds of surgeries or medical procedures, or even just the fear or anxiety about the women, a woman's reproductive system. Very Mars in Cancer. But again, that's not to scare anybody. The thing is that the signification of Mars in Cancer has to do with that which is sort of helpless and vulnerable, and the need to protect or advocate for that which is helpless and vulnerable. My daughter, when we had Mars in Cancer crossed my natal Mercury, which rules my 5th house of children, and she sprained her ankle. And it was such a helpless feeling as a parent to see my daughter, injured and not being able to, she had to have a little walking boot and crutches for a couple weeks, and now she's okay. But, there was that sense of having to advocate for her. We had to get like some special stuff with the school, so she takes an elevator rather than having to use the crutches up the stairs. Parental advocacy for a wounded child came up for me right as Mars went over my natal Mercury. I thought that was really kind of, you can't make this stuff up. But often what happens is emotionally charged material, whether that's coming from home and family or body or children or parenting or, whatever the case may be, it's tender, vulnerable stuff. And then when you add in Saturn and Pisces, it can be weighty and serious and sort of melancholic, and it can feel sort of existentially heavy. Like Saturn in Pisces is looking for bliss in a world that's filled with disappointments. And so when these two planets come together, there's a weightiness that just can't be denied. There's a tender, vulnerable, weighty kind of quality. And when they come together in a trine, maybe the benefit is that we can approach or address or deal with these weighty but vulnerable subjects with care and concern. These are malefics in water signs. And so how can we seriously, adequately, lovingly address difficult things? Can we persevere with care and tenderness to do something difficult? Can we empathize and reach out and nurture and take care of ourselves or other people, or work through a difficult conversation with care and concern, even when it feels like there's an edge and a spice and a heaviness? This trine suggests that we can, because trines can be, most of the time, are very constructive. So that's another way of thinking about it. Now, I like to say that this is just very Mars in Cancer. And with Saturn in Pisces, we have that sense of empathy and almost like a feeling of emotional obligation, but also questions about boundaries and how much we should give versus how much we should, be careful not to enable someone, how much we can give and how much we'll end up, if it will end up draining ourselves to give too much. But all of those questions about boundaries and obligation emotionally are probably happening in relationship to people you're close to, or even in your family, who are wounded or struggling or dealing with something. Now, it doesn't even necessarily have to be about boundaries and how much should you help or not help. That's one angle of it. But the other one would just be that there's some very just a very serious level of psychological, emotional, physical difficulty that's coming up in the family. The family constellation is being activated in ways that are, a little heavier, more serious, more vulnerable. We say this because Cancer is the sign of the moon, and so that Cancerian, that Mars is going through Cancer, can mean that there are difficulties, and Mars is the god of strife, right? So we associate just the edges and work of the world that is so much a part of life, by the way, that we really don't get anywhere by trying to deny or neglect or bypass. We have to square up and allow for life to have challenges as like baked into it. So those challenges might be coming up right now through home and family. And then the question becomes, where's the silver lining here? What's the lesson? What are the resources available? How do we work through this harmoniously? But that's something that can come up with respect to this transit. And it has been growing this week and will be growing all the way through this Grand Water Trine we talked about, taking us all the way to like October 10th or 11th. So that family karma really strongly activated right now. Now, when Mars in Cancer, and Saturn in Pisces trine one another, remember that ancient astrologers called these signs mute, which means that water signs sometimes hold things close. They hold their cards close, and they don't necessarily let on how they're feeling or what they're thinking. They can be a little secretive, and often that is due to a little bit of anxiety or fear about exposing themselves or of, not being safe. So it's not that like water signs are secretive in a devious way. Often it's that water signs are more aware of subtleties and nuances, subtexts emotionally, and also will sometimes have, there's feelings that people who are very watery that they have regularly that they don't necessarily even know they're having. Like one of the things I see frequently for people with Mars and Cancer natally on a psychological level is learning. There's a whole group of Mars and Cancer natives that have to learn how to go, what am I feeling? I'm getting angry at someone, but it's because my mood changed. I was feeling good and I'm not feeling good. So what changed my mood? And if I reflect on that and I figure it out, then all of a sudden I have greater clarity and awareness of why I'm feeling what I'm feeling and why I'm maybe attacking someone or being passive aggressive or whatever. It can be really hard for water signs in general to just identify what I'm feeling and why I'm feeling what I'm feeling. And maybe you can't always identify why you're feeling what you're feeling, but even to just be able to name, I'm feeling sad right now, I'm feeling angry right now, and to do something constructive with that feeling because you sat with it and you were able to identify it and respect its existence and then create some space to feel it or ask some meaningful questions, right? Work something out. Well, what can happen when planets like Mars and Saturn get together in a watery trine is that feelings that we've been having, even if they're patterns of emotional response or something we've been feeling some way about for a while, will just manifest and come up to the surface to be dealt with, hopefully in a trine constructively. But the idea here is that emotional realities that haven't been spoken or that haven't been seen or that haven't been articulated may somehow come to the surface, and then dealing with them. How do we, just because we have feelings doesn't mean we're owed anything, but it also doesn't invalidate how we're feeling, right? Stuff like this. So watch for emotional realities that are just coming to the surface to be seen and worked through and respected and validated, and then constructively understood and maybe resolved tensions that need to be worked through. Number 5 would be about releasing grudges and moving or moving fluidly through obstacles. See, Mars and Saturn as a combination can be about grudges. That's why I said sometimes there's like emotional stuff that's going to come to the surface. And some of those things coming to the surface might be hard feelings or grudges or resentments. But when they come to the surface and then there's a trine, there's a potential here to move through and release resentments or grudges or to release something that we've been holding on to. This is also an aspect that can allow for us to see and understand an obstacle, and then through emotional intelligence, not just rational intelligence, but through emotional intelligence, to flow or move fluidly through or around obstacles as they appear, because we ask ourselves how we feel, and we use our feeling body to navigate a problem as much as we try to solve it rationally, or we try to say or do something to solve it. Sometimes we need the right shift of feelings or the right acknowledgement of feelings, a vulnerable conversation, and then there's a way that we can move around obstacles as they come up. So honoring the emotional body during this time, I think, is probably the best advice I could give. And releasing resentments, taking time to address deeper or heavier emotions and feelings that are rising to the surface, and finding the benefit of what's coming up right now, because the trine does suggest that there are benefits here. And then I think the other thing is just very expectedly watch for the continuation of news or unfolding changes or challenges in family dynamics. Anything kind of Cancerian there. All right, we'll leave it there for today. Thank you everybody for listening. And remember, after I sign off now, there is a informational video about the upcoming course. So if you want to study with us, stick around and hear more about the first year program. We'd love to have you in it. It starts November 16th. You can learn more about it on the website on the first year course page. That's nightlightastrology.com. Otherwise, everything that you need to know is coming up next. Bye. Hey, everyone. I'm glad that you're sticking around to hear more about the year one program that's coming up. The program starts on November 16th of this fall, and I am here today to tell you all that the program includes and why I think you really like it if you're thinking about studying astrology. So a few practical details about the course as well. The class begins November 16th, as I mentioned, but it takes place on Saturdays from 12 to about 2 or 3 p.m. Eastern time. So that's 11 to 2 Central, and typically classes are about 2 hours long. Sometimes they run over with Q&A and discussion, but you can always plan for about 2 hours and you won't miss any of the actual lecture content for the day. You may have to duck out a little early if Q&A or discussion is extending. Sometimes it does, which is why we say between 2 and 3 hours, but typically it's around 2. All of the classes are recorded, so if you can't attend live, you are more than welcome to watch the recordings at your own pace and on your own time. You have lifetime access to the recordings, and everything is housed on a student website. I want to actually give you a just a little preview of what that student website looks like. So I am going to open up my own version of Thinkific, which is the platform that we use. So here's are some of my courses. These are all the Nightlight courses I teach. You can see on the page. But I'm going to tune into, let's go to Nightlight 28, which is the section that began in June of 2024. So here you're going to see that we have orientation instructions, course information, class links, and calendar. Everything that you need to know how to access the course is there, and you'll have a version of this in your own panel that you get set up with when you enroll. And then our lessons are laid out. So lesson 1, we have the video, the audio, the slides, the transcript. We have the Q&A box transcript so you can see what people were saying in the chat box during class. We have flashcards. We have a workbook. We have planet and sign glyph flashcards. We have bonus material, videos that we like from YouTube that we link you to. Say, check this video out, check that video out. They go along with some of the things we talked about in class. So every lesson has material for you to go as far as you want with, but the main thing is the video, audio, slides, transcript, etc. are all listed there so that you can download and watch it on your own time if you can't attend live. Again, the live classes do happen on Saturdays for this cohort, starting November 16th. That is our first day of class. And then going forward, it always meets on Saturdays, and we give you the class schedule to map out. And the breaks that we have, the study sessions that we have, everything's mapped out on the class calendar for you. So those are just a few practical details that, just to kind of start us off with. So I'm going to take you over to the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. And I'm going to share with you some information about the program and sort of walk you through what it includes and what you can expect. So it is an almost year-long program. We typically finish between 10 and 11 months out of the year It can depend a little bit on some of my teaching and scheduling, because sometimes I teach at conferences and it may delay some of our modules by a week or something like that. But it's typically around 10 to 11 months that the program lasts. So we call it our first year program. At Nightlight, we have a program for absolute beginners. You may want to check that out if you are like brand spanking new. That would be 8 to 10 hours of content that's really meant to set you up for the first year course. We sort of assume that if you're coming into the first year program, you already know a little bit about astrology. For example, you have some familiarity with the signs, planets, and houses. Maybe you know what aspects are, but you want to learn more about what they are. But if you are really at the very total entry level space, then try Astrology for Beginners. And when you take that, you could do that right away and then join the first year course in November, and you'd be perfectly set up for it. But anyhow, in this program, over the course of about a year, we work through 30 lessons that I lead. And those lessons are all 2 to 3 hours each, including lecture, a little break, and a Q&A portion where we open up for people to come on mic and camera and ask questions and have an interactive discussion about the material for the day. The program is broken into modules that cover a variety of topics in ancient Hellenistic astrology. That is the earliest era of horoscopic astrology. And so if you don't know a lot about the different schools of astrology, Hellenistic astrology is going to be the kind of astrology that you see a lot of astrologers practicing nowadays. It's become more popular in the last 30 years or so. And that is due to the fact that a lot of ancient texts with some of the original techniques of horoscopic astrologers were recently translated into the English language, and it's created this renaissance in terms of the use of ancient approaches to astrology. I have a background in modern psychological, archetypal, and evolutionary astrology, and so of course I bring those things to the table, but the course is primarily focused on the excavation of ancient techniques and the spiritual philosophy that ancient astrologers also espoused. The closest thing that I can tell you to what that looks like is, ask this question: do you resonate with the philosophy that you hear me take on my YouTube channel? If so, then you're going to love this course in terms of its philosophical and spiritual approach, because the spiritual approach to astrology that I teach is really at the heart of the program. And that's a big part of my life. I approach astrology from a spiritual standpoint. It doesn't belong to one religion or one particular school of thought, but you will hear me talking about things like the soul, the belief in the transmigration of the soul. You'll hear me talk about the need to be soul-centered in our client approach to counseling in astrology. You'll hear me have an appreciation for psychological dimensions of astrology, but also ancient astrology is really very, very good at developing your predictive capacity. We talk about what kinds of predictions are appropriate, how to make appropriate predictions, how to be the right kind of astrologer for our clients without inducing any fear. So there's a lot of care that goes into the development of this craft. But ancient astrology is really amazing when it comes to honing your predictive abilities. And then what you'll find is in this program, there's also a pretty significant emphasis on the psychological dimensions and client care. Anyhow, we go into the roots of ancient Hellenistic astrology and its techniques in this program, and the 30 classes are broken into modules. We work through the history and philosophy. We work through planets, houses, signs, aspects, essential and accidental dignities, and then we get into approaches to the delineation of natal charts. And then at the end of the program, almost a third of the program is dedicated to live client readings, where you're going to see me meet with a person and apply what we've been studying for an hour-long reading. We take a break, we come back, and then we workshop. How did I do that? Why did I make these choices? How did I handle this or that came up in the reading? And it becomes easily the favorite part for most students of the entire program, because by that point, you've got so much theory that you're really ready to see it put into action. We alternate those live client practice sessions with hands-on practice, where students get to bring chart questions into class that we work on. And that's also something that most people really love. A lot of people will look at the curriculum and say, well, I already know planets, houses, and signs and aspects and dignities. But not if you haven't studied Hellenistic astrology, because the approach that ancient astrologers had to these topics is vastly different from the approach that modern astrologers take. So you will be, in a sense, relearning basic things in a brand new way. And I think a much more enriching, deep, and philosophically clear way. it's really nice to know the why behind things. This program and Hellenistic astrology in general is very good at helping you understand the why behind everything that we do. Also, it's really important to participate when you study astrology in a living lineage. So one of the reasons I don't let people jump ahead to my second or third year programs is because I want you to be entrained to a lineage, a particular way of doing things that comes from an astrologer who has a very living, busy, active practice and who has had teachers themselves. I think that's important for astrological learning. That's the model that my own learning take, and so that's what I really want students to take away from my programs. Anyhow, so all of that aside, the second year program focuses, after we build our understanding of the basic delineation techniques of birth charts, in year 2, we move into timing techniques, which is all about when the karma of a birth chart is going to be active and expressing itself throughout the course of a lifetime. That's year 2. Year 3 focuses on the development of counseling skills at a much deeper level. And then we also have a 1-year horary program, which is about the development of a very specific predictive technique that can be a really amazing tool to add to your kit. That is 4 years worth of training programs that we have. However, I want to mention that many people take our classes just for the sake, purely for the sake of their own personal growth. Taking these programs is very much like being taught how to utilize a technology that for yourself will be deeply useful for the rest of your life, and maybe for close friends or family members around you. Many people come through our programs taking that benefit away. We'll study through all 4 years of our programs with no intention of being professional. This is their hobby. This is a spiritual tool that will have it will pay dividends over a long period of time. However, many people without the intention to practice come into our courses and discover that they're actually good at it and may end up reading for other people part-time. And then there are students who are deeply, intensely motivated to practice for other people. And it is not that our programs really make those people successful. Our programs contribute to your development, but it really is that some people have a calling to practice professionally. And these programs are designed to give you all the tools you need to develop that confidence and to develop a really coherent set of tools and to entrain yourself to a lineage, which you can also develop your own unique style out of. So those are some of the kinds of people that take our programs, you might say. So the 30 classes on the year are then broken into modules. And in between modules, we have 2 course directors who are present in all of the classes, and they lead breakout tutoring sessions where you can come in and review or ask questions about the module that we've just completed, which is usually anywhere between 2 and 3 classes each. So those breakout study sessions led by our tutors are outside of the 30 classes and very useful. A lot of people like to attend those because they also offer opportunity for community and just lively conversation. We also have 12 online webinar classes led by guest teachers that we host throughout the year. Those are free, and if you can't make them live, they're all uploaded into your student folder. You also have an interactive group forum discussion staffed with tutors who typically respond to questions that you have about the material within 24 hours. So if you can't attend a tutoring session or you just have a random question on a Tuesday night, you can pop it in there and you'll get an answer. We also have a ton of bonus material, optional quizzes, flashcards, tons of supplemental material that is there to help people go as deeply as they want. We have a reading list that is expansive. And that reading list, we don't expect anyone to accomplish. It's more so a resource that we give you saying, here, if you want to know all the things I've read, if you want to know all the things that I love, if you want to know all the things I recommend, here's a master list of everything for each lesson. You could go, PhD level if you wanted to and read thousands and thousands of pages. Or you might find that there's just one extra book that looks really interesting and you want to pick it up. But we pride ourselves on making sure you have a ton of resources. You have lifetime access to all the class recordings. You can email our staff or me throughout the year with questions, and my staff will also defer to me in the case that they don't know the answer to a question. So that is what the program includes. It starts November 16th. If you would like to join, at the bottom between now and October 15th, our early bird payments are available. So that saves you some money off the cost of the course. There is a 12-month installment plan that is cheaper than our normal plan, a one-time payment that's significantly cheaper than our normal one-time payment. So you get these little sales that we do until October 15th. We also have need-based tuition assistance. So if you are someone who would like to take this program, but you are on a fixed or tight budget, we have an application there. Click apply now. Just tell us what you need. We give a range. We say between this dollar amount and this dollar amount, what can you spend? And then we set you up with a plan for that tuition number per month. And that is available for anyone. We ask people to apply early because those spots are limited, but we are really accommodating. We try to make sure that nobody's priced out of a spiritual education. Like, this topic should be very accessible for people because I believe that the divine is speaking through the sky, and like anyone should have access to understanding what it's saying, right? So anyway, that is a bit about the program. I hope that this has been useful for you. If there are any questions you have, you can look over the curriculum content on the page, on the year one page. There's more information there. Check out the FAQ section for more questions. Email us info@nightlightastrology.com. And I hope to see some of you in class soon. I think this is going to be a really powerful program because it's also starting right as Pluto's moving into Aquarius. And within the year, we're going to have a Uranus-Pluto trine with Uranus in Gemini. These Aries signatures and the connection between Uranus and Pluto make for a very powerful year to advance our understanding of astrology. So it's a great election year for studying. And I hope to see some of you in class soon.